You're listening to the Really Very Crunchy podcast with your hosts, Emily
and Jason.
And guess what? We are finally not camping.
Yeah, but we're not done with the trip, that's for sure.
Jason broke our pop-up.
Yeah,
so we are just
it happens.
Ending the trip.
Broke is a relative term. It's more like I gotta work on it when I'm not distracted.
We should tell what happened. So whenever you have a pop-up, there are these little clips that hold it down and it holds it in place, and they're like strong clamps. And in order to pop it up, you have to unclamp the clips. And Jason didn't unclamp the clamps.
When I then used the winch,
it's an electric ring button to push up the pop-up. So he's trying to winch. Push it up while the clamps were still down and broke it.
Well, I pushed the button for just a second, and then it kept going on its own, which is unusual, and I think I burned it out.
I didn't hear that part.
Yeah.
Well, and then...
What?
So usually, like, we've had pop-ups that were manual, that you have this tool, and you can twist it up, and it came with one of those tools, and you would think that you could just use that tool to do it, but this, because of the broken winch, every twist, it takes like 100 twists to move a centimeter.
To get the pop-up fully extended, it takes a solid 30 to 40 minutes.
Of constant cranking. Movement. And we've done it. We did it. And decided
and we're used to cranking out material, but man, that's a different level.
We are... ending our journey, coming back home, we're all a little tired of the pop-up. It still feels damp.
Well, yeah.
And so we just decided after we got it all the way down. Oh, not to mention, we tried to rig it with a drill thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
you
then
mean
it got
the winch?
stuck.
We tried to use the winch using a drill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got stuck, the bit.
Yeah.
So we had to like take plates off. Then we lost the screws. We had to borrow screws from other parts.
I'm surprised you didn't say like the nail thingies, screws. Yeah, because I'm having to rename all the things that you're saying.
Okay.
So
well,
to clarify
neither
for
of
the
us is
listener,
handy, and
some of us are handier than others. And
well,
we both think it's us.
No, I don't.
So we are in a hotel.
We're in a hotel. Look at me in my throne.
Yeah.
This is a weird chair.
It's a nice chair.
Jason covered the TV with a quilt for you guys so you wouldn't be offended.
Yeah. And my shadow is joining us today. If you're watching, he kind of goes on his own. He does this little Peter Pan thing every now and then, but I'll catch him one of these days. Do you know the story of Peter Pan?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that one?
Heard it.
Yeah. Well, some of you out there will laugh. I'm not editing it out. This is all freeform. I don't edit anything out. So, apologies if there are any weird noises that we can't control. Next podcast and then on out will likely be from our home where we can control things. But
are you looking forward to being back home?
For the ease of work, yes, because we're not getting a ton of writing done and we're not getting a ton of filming done.
I can see that.
We're filming in a hotel room and I had to set up, and that's, and it's not the setup I would prefer.
I forgot what it was like to do dishes with hot water. We stayed in a hotel last night and we cooked soup in the hotel room. And Jason was freaking out because I made toast and the butter got a little hot. I made toast, like we just have a hot plate.
In a skillet. You made toast, yeah.
And the butter started smoking, which would have been really bad if the fire alarm went off
Miss
in a hotel
room in college had to get everyone to evacuate because of a what? Were you cooking? A falafel. So this was, I was just seeing this. We check in 10 minutes later. You have to evacuate the whatever hotel.
And I feel like a hotel might you think the sprinklers would immediately start, or you think that's like a heat thing? I
I
don't know.
actually
the
think they would
mechanics of that.
isolate it to your room and try to figure out if anything was actually going on.
That's
I don't
good.
think it would be. I just think it would be incredibly embarrassing.
Okay.
I don't think anything would actually happen
Oh.
unless there was like legit. I think you got to melt those things now for like that to.
Oh,
be a
good.
thing.
Okay.
I think they don't do. They don't deploy the sprinklers for smoke. That would be ridiculous. If they do that, then they're not up to code.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad to know that.
I could
feel
be
a little
wrong.
dumb.
I could
think
be
you're
wrong.
right. No,
I'm just applying.
there's like a little glass tube in there.
Yeah, I
Probably
think that
something to
has
do
to
with
break.
heat, shatters
or
it.
melt or
Yeah.
whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
The-
anyway,
the
we had
OSHA people
soup.
listening are like, "Oh my goodness, these people are idiots."
And I washed our dishes. Actually, I washed some of the dishes in the bathtub. And I've always said, like, out of the characters on Seinfeld, I am most like Kramer.
Yeah.
And I have never felt more Kramer than washing my pots and pans in the bathtub
Yeah.
at a hotel. But
Also, that's
anyway,
disgusting.
it was so nice using hot water. I'm really
Well-
looking forward to that.
Yeah. Yay.
I'm not really looking forward to being home, but I am looking forward to washing dishes with hot water on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Well, it's been an interesting trip in that it has given us a perspective on a lot of historical events. We went and we visited the Mayflower. We visited
The Mayflower, too.
Well, yeah. Well, nothing.
The original Mayflower was shipped back and then sold for scrap.
Good to know. Actually, almost everything we've seen on this trip is
It's a
two.
replica.
So,
Except we did get to see the real flag that the Star Spangled Banner
that
was
we know of.
based on. It was pretty tattered and rough, I believe.
I mean, wouldn't you make it tattered and I'm going to present a new conspiracy theory.
Everything.
The Star Spangled Banner is
That's
it's a
your
fake.
conspiracy theory?
I'm going to steal the Star Spangled Banner.
Did
What
you-
if the movie? What if National Treasure was about him trying to steal the
Steal
Star
the
Spangled
flag.
Banner? Is that what it's the Star Spangled Banner? And he tries to wrap it up, and it's just so giant.
It would be really heavy. I think it's made of wool.
I would like to add that there's a chance this episode might be a little shorter than normal because we are literally 3 feet away from our children who are sleeping and currently moving around a little bit in the bed. It might be a 30-minute episode, people. I'm sorry.
Need to get him back in his tooth pillow. I just heard some teeth grinding over there.
Yeah, we do. Anyway, back to the original point. We've learned a lot about many historical figures, historical events, reminded of things we haven't thought about in forever, talking about voyages and struggles and different things people have lived through. And it kind of just got us to talking about, different eras and, how we always talk about the good old days. We talk about the good old days in our own lives.
Yes.
The days where we, everything was better when we were younger, yada, yada. But then there's also the idea of the good old days generationally, things we aren't that well acquainted with personally, obviously.
Only through books and
Books or,
movies.
And so we have this idea, or other people in our lives, like grandparents and stuff. But they're just doing it off of their personal stuff. You know what I mean? So we have this idea. I kind of wonder, though, it got me to wondering, does everybody long for the good old days?
You sounded a little bit like Mr. Rogers when you said that. It got me wondering. I'm like waiting for Trolley to come around the corner.
It got me wondering.
Let's go. Let's find out together. Were the good old days actually better? I don't know.
See, now you just brought up something that, Mr. Rogers is a very big part of that discussion for a lot of people in a lot of generations. He's part of what our generation and a couple of generations older would consider the good old days.
Well,
He's a major part of the good old days.
and you know what my theory is?
What's that?
Simpler is better.
We've had an argument about this.
His television show was so simple,
Yes.
but it was so mesmerizing for so many children, and so many people loved it.
If simpler is better, why doesn't simple stay?
Because people are greedy and they get a taste and want more. And then we desensitize ourselves to whatever it is. You just said it today. We were talking about moving to New Hampshire because it is gorgeous.
We're moving next week.
And you said, but really, even people who live in the mountains lose the luster of living in the mountains. I don't know how you said it. Something
Well,
like
it's
that.
true.
Like you
Yeah.
just don't notice the mountains anymore.
Well, I was traveling in Utah, Salt Lake City, and it's a city that is basically in this valley. I don't really know if you describe it as a valley, but it's just surrounded by mountains, white-capped, beautiful mountains all around it. And I had an Uber driver, and I was talking to him like, this must be just really, really incredible to live near and see all the time. And he's like, yeah, you get used to it. And he was really kind of jaded about it. It's some of the prettiest mountains I've seen. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, that really struck me. It's like, wow, if you can get used to that, you can get used to anything.
I know the feeling. I married the most handsome, just charming. Look at that dimple. Dimple. Yeah, that was your cue.
Sorry.
And while I still think that about you, I look at you, I get mad at you. You know, you annoy me. You get used to it.
Wow.
But if you really step back.
This is out of left field a little bit.
If you really step back and just admire you as a person, really a wonder, Jason.
You know,
I'm trying to be nicer.
Seeing you every morning, it's like waking up and seeing.
You can't go in and then you can't try and out compliment me.
It's like seeing Mount Rushmore for the first time every time.
Mount Rushmore, not.
I'm sorry, the Grand Tetons. It's like seeing the Grand Tetons again for the very first time every morning. I don't.
Thanks. Okay, we're gonna stop it. It's getting a little R-rated.
Is it? Okay. I could put a disclaimer at the beginning of the episode. Mentions provocative
Tetons.
Provocative mountains later in the episode.
Okay.
Insinuates that he loves his wife. Little ears, be warned. Well, if you could pick an era to live in that you've read about, whatever, what would it be?
I think you're going to be surprised by this.
Don't say now. It's not true.
No, it's not true. Actually, I'm having a hard time deciding. I have so many caveats here. Love the late 1800s, early 1900s, high society. Like, I'm not just going to be a simple...
Wait. Hold on. Okay.
Like, I need to be basically a princess or a duchess.
You know, I'll take any era as long as I'm royalty.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
You mean like as a normie?
No, I
like
would
what
say
I am now?
given your station in life now, what era would you live in? Not I would be a princess in Bolivia in 1922. I don't even know. I'm just
I get it. Wait, but couldn't I invent something or
you're allowed
marry
to be
someone?
a midwife in the 1930s in East London if you want to be.
Didn't that show take place
I don't know,
in
50s, whatever.
Or, yeah, I think it was about that. I actually read a few of those books called Midwife. Great books if you want to cry. I actually think I might choose to be an adult in the 70s.
The 70s?
Yeah.
Wow, so you're choosing the serial killer era.
Well, okay, hear me
where
out.
it's the highest. There were 300 serial killers known in the 1970s. Did you know that? I was ready for the 70s.
Okay, here's why. I think that there were a lot of conveniences. There were washing machines and central air.
Just all of them were going to burn your house down if you did it wrong.
Nah. And you could still go to a national park and jump in wherever you wanted. If there was, a river or something. Like, people were still free, and it still felt like you could just go on a drive and show up and not have to have booked a campground in advance, because that's how things are these days.
Yeah.
But you still had the conveniences, but times were simpler. There wasn't 24-hour news, and there wasn't the internet.
Right.
And I think I was reading something that women's happiness was at an all-time high in the 70s. It has not gotten better. It's only gotten worse. And people's anxiety and...
Unless they knew Ted Bundy.
That's not even funny, Jason.
You laughed.
So nowadays, anxiety, depression, and sleep problems are at an all-time high. And there are studies, like it's something like the paradox of women's happiness or something. And it's a scientific paper written by Yale University that I started reading at one point and didn't finish. But basically it was just saying we aren't getting happier, even with like more freedoms and feminism and whatever like that drove.
So we should take those things away and see if you
I'm
get
not saying
happier,
that.
maybe.
No, I'm just stating what it said is that
okay.
despite all of these advances, women are not happier.
Right.
So,
Right.
What about you, Jason? What era would you live in?
1958.
That is extremely specific.
Yeah. I read a Stephen King book, 11/24/63. And the main character, Jake, he goes back, he's a time traveler. He goes back in time to 1958, and then he has a few years to try to stop the JFK assassination. And honestly, the writing, it's really just because of this book and reviews I've read of it, is that he's essentially writing about his childhood. The setting is his childhood, the 50s. And
Is Stephen King's?
Yes. Because, he's like in his 70s now or whatever. And so he was a kid in the 50s. And he wrote the 1950s in such a way, other than like the, bloody stuff that happens throughout the book and, the whatever. But the era in and of itself and how people interacted and how things were done, it just felt nice. And it went back to that simple. Now, I wouldn't want to go back to 1958 if I were black. I'm just being honest.
Or a woman.
Maybe. Or a lot of different things. I would love to go there without the racism, But obviously that's not possible. Because that's just what happened in that era, and that's awful. And so obviously you don't want to go back to that. So you can't say this. It's all just about.
I know there's so many layers.
There's a lot of layers to it. You can get in trouble talking about what era you want to go back to.
Yeah,
you can. It's like, well,
fashion
I didn't
wise,
think about that. Yeah, it's you can't. It's weird.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It's tricky. But I do say it, if I may, one more. That is also my dad's childhood, and he had. You see pictures, you see the simplicity of it. I long for that era of simplicity, just like you were saying.
And I think a lot of obviously people were unhappy. Some women had a really hard time because their husbands were abusive and they didn't have as many rights, and they were worked so hard, and like we were saying, there's so many caveats. But I also think people found more joy in accomplishing tasks like doing laundry. And sometimes it was more of like a community type thing. I remember your grandmother talking about like actually going to the river and washing clothes in this little mountain town, and like multiple people were there, and they would make it an event, you know, like a fellowship. And I think partially what makes people feel happier back then is nobody was under the impression that everyone had it so much better than they did. Like Instagram wasn't around. You weren't left wondering, does that person even struggle? No, you knew Bobby Sue struggled because you helped her find her horse.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's an interesting.
and you
bring
let her borrow eggs.
You bring up a very interesting point, because in our era, we have our community is a lot bigger. We have, not in a good way, not a personal community either. Your community is full of people you don't know.
Sure.
You talk about the Instagram crowd or whatever. I mean, you went from not that long ago, the people you cared about, celebrities, let's say, were the mega stars. You knew about a handful of them. Sinatra, the Walter Cronkite, whatever. You knew of a few people.
Wait, these are the celebrities that...
Back in the day, a long time ago.
Okay.
A long time ago. And below that, all you knew was your family and friends.
Sure.
And maybe some people in the town. There's now, because of social media, all the people in between. Your friends of friends, your family that you haven't talked to in forever, but they still sort of send you memes every now and then, and you're like, who are you? And you look weird. And then you have the influencers, the micro influencers, the macro influencers, and these people that you start to care about. And like, you're suddenly in this new era, you have so many people to care about
and think about and wonder about
and occupy
and observe
your time with.
Sure.
And it's weird.
It is strange. And then, I mean, you've lost the true community, though.
The connection, certainly.
People used to talk to their neighbors. And I have neighbors. We've lived in our house for almost 4 years.
Well, we've talked to our neighbors.
Some of them, but not the people across the street and down a little bit. I mean, we look at their house every single day. I've knocked on their door multiple times to give them zucchini, and they did not answer.
I wouldn't answer either. You're holding zucchini.
I put it in their mailbox.
Bring a pie and they'll answer.
And they took it out of their mailbox. So
and threw it in the woods. They're not doing that with a pie. You're getting a thank you note with a pie.
Okay, well, the people down from them, one house that we see, I see them.
I sent them squash, and I just don't understand.
No, I don't know their names. I don't know anything about them at all. And even when I've attempted to knock on their door, I've never gotten an answer. I can't get to know them. And that's kind of weird.
Yeah, we should start a neighborhood watch.
Nah.
Okay. In terms of safety, we're in like the safest era.
What?
In terms of wars and things like that. There's horrible wars going on right now. There's horrible wars going on right now. Well, we talked about serial killers earlier. That's dropped by a bunch. The 70s and 80s were a horrible time for them, but like not anything now like it used to be. Wars are nothing like they used to be. Disease and sickness is nothing like it used to be. You're technically in the safest time that we've ever been in history.
Kind of.
But at the same time, we're one button push away from a nuclear annihilation.
And also,
which is a little off-putting.
It feels like all children are at risk now. All children are in danger because of the internet and access.
And I wonder how much of that is, okay.
I mean, it's not just
there's new dangers for
physically, but mental
There's a ton of new dangers that didn't exist. New avenues for bad people to do bad things.
Yes. But
True.
also, I mean, I'm just talking about like, and I'm trying to put this delicately because of young listeners, but images of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
Is so prevalent.
Yeah.
And I think that it is so dangerous for children to have access to the internet, and it can totally shape your entire life.
Yeah.
And really ruin it.
Yeah.
In exposure to that stuff.
Right.
And so it's just, to me, feels so dangerous. And having 2 young boys, I mean, that is at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
In how to navigate that.
It's terrifying. I mean, it's the other people that are coming after kids. Well, and then there's the kids interacting with each other on the, I mean, there's so many.
Bullying and
Safest
such.
time in human history is a very relative term, because safety isn't what it used to mean. It used to mean you're not going to die. Now it's like, are you going to be shaped by someone that isn't your parents or your close community? Are you going to fall into this trap that nobody even knows you've fallen into? Whatever. Like, it's a different world. So I don't like this era. But
I mean, I think about, nobody would ever send a child on public transportation in the United States, right? That doesn't happen?
it happens.
It does?
Sure, it happens. It happens a lot less often than it used to, for good reason. But
so, like, to me,
sure
that
it
feels like
happens.
maybe it's not as safe because nobody would do that. Or
well,
it
there's
doesn't
also
happen as much.
this isn't a very common conversation, but there's also the idea that we live in a fearful world where, the news is constantly, it's fear-based, because if you don't have that, it doesn't sell. You can't sell advertising if you don't have something that people will read or watch. So you have to put the crazy stuff out there. So is it inflated? Is it inflamed because they need news? I don't know. The 24-hour news cycle, yada, yada, yada. They have to feed people something.
Is
and it's
it just
fear.
Americans, though, that are like that? Because Koreans put their little kids on public transportation, changing subways more than once.
I mean, it's a very different culture.
Yeah. So
it is a
you
very
think
different culture.
our culture, like, wants to be scared?
No, I think our culture has you can't. I mean, you can't put it down to just one little thing. I mean, we have America. We are a melting pot. We're we come from so many different types of backgrounds.
And I love that. I love when we go places, we hear different languages, we see different people. We were talking about this when we were in, where was it? Boston.
Yeah.
And you can, like, travel the world's cuisine without ever leaving a city.
Yeah.
You can have the experiences of different cultures
and
in America.
the legit stuff too.
Yeah, you can't get in other countries like that, as far as we've felt. I mean, I'm sure, in big cities like London and whatever, like obviously any big city is going to have that. But America just has so much of that and so many opportunities to experience different cultures. Anyway, do you think that has, because of that and how we are, that we're disjointed and disconnected, and there isn't that, like, solid, like in Korean culture, it's a very group mentality, like what's best for the group, and they're going to look out for those small children on the subway because that's, like, their people. And America's so mixed and different.
But
and
I don't
varied
think that if you put a small child on the public transportation, that the
other
people in
aren't gonna look out
America
for them.
aren't going to look out for the kid.
Sure, but do you think there's, like, less of a
I think there would be
sense
more
of
of a panic of, why is there a kid on this bus by himself?
Sure.
What in the world? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Do I need to call somebody? I think there wouldn't be. It would just be a different type of care. There's psychos in America. There's psychos in Korea.
Oh, I I know.
I'm not saying I don't think it's a great idea for kids to ride public transportation by themselves in Korea.
Really?
Yeah.
It felt so safe.
Sure. But there's also perception versus reality, and we don't know what the reality is. There's a lot of bad, seedy things happening in Korea. We saw it.
Yeah.
With our own eyes. I don't have the answer. Anything we say is based out of
personal experience and observation.
Yeah, so I'm sure there are plenty of people who have studied this a lot better.
Which we can't be the most learned people ever.
We should start
getting a podcast.
We need to get people to interview who know this kind of stuff.
We should.
I'm like, yeah, well, it's the American spirit.
We're gonna do that though. We're gonna start doing interviews
all the time because we're done talking to each other. I can hear some of them screaming out right now. No, we like it. Just a conversation. A lot of people say it's like they're them with their spouse talking. I'm like, well, you should just go talk to your spouse.
No, I like
kidding.
that.
I love it. It's the nicest compliment ever, actually.
I know.
Yeah.
Those messages really do warm Jason's heart.
They warm my heart.
It makes him feel like all his work is worth it.
I will say, I need those messages. Get a little overwhelmed sometimes, and I need those. If anything goes, the podcast goes first. So, unless I get more of those messages.
This is getting awkward.
If I got a bunch of encouraging messages, emails, that said, "You rock, Jason and Emily, and I love your podcast." Yeah, honestly, you know what would keep the podcast going? Is if we got to 1,000 reviews.
This is so awkward. Stop. It feels gross.
1,000 positive reviews.
No.
Today, we're just trying to reach. It's like one of those radio.
Telethon.
Telethon. Or, yeah. What?
Is that what it was called?
It's a telethon.
Yeah, when people would call in.
You just call in. You get on your favorite podcast app now, and we're trying to reach 1,000 reviews, 1,000 positive reviews now of how much you love this podcast.
Girl,
now we're gonna have Bob Barker come
Stop.
on and tell us about his childhood. So
You're trying to get back into the topic at hand.
no, he's dead. But anyway, the topic at hand.
The good old days. I do think
the good old days are just bad old days for other people.
Well, I think being a child in the 90s was really kind of special. It was the last, and obviously the childhoods before that, because they also didn't have the internet and didn't have social media and didn't have just the heaviness that comes along with that. There was a freedom there. Kick the can and, all the summer nights
the can.
out.
You never kicked
a
can down the road.
Did.
Oh, gross.
I had a whole little gang of friends in my neighborhood, and we ran all over the neighborhood.
Yeah, we chewed bubble gum and rolled it up in our sleeves and kicked the can down the road after we played.
Ride our bikes to the gas station and get a
Got my grandma's cigarettes.
push-up pop. No, that was not part of my childhood. See, that was kind of cool. They started recognizing children as children and not giving them as many
I still have my Dare shirt.
Yeah,
I don't.
but the thing is,
Thank you, Officer Daryl Knopfsinger, for your work in Dare. Thanks to you, I didn't.
Jason
do
has
drugs.
never smoked marijuana.
Edibles.
You have not.
I've had a brownie or two. Sans the ganja
I was like,
with not the ganja.
yeah, I bet a cosmic brownie is far worse for you than a homemade ganja brownie.
You heard it here, folks. Crunchy Mom advocating for THC.
I did no such thing.
Have a little TLC with our THC hour.
I
This
said
is going to become the Bill Maher show
probably
here in
better
about
for
3
you
seconds.
than a cosmic brownie. Those things never even tasted good. They taste like chemicals.
Ganja brownies?
Cosmic.
Oh.
Never had a ganja brownie.
Is ganja the right word?
I don't know. We're such goody two shoes.
It's probably a bad word, and I don't even know it. I need to, Switch it over to explicit.
I think a 90s childhood was something special, and it was the good old days. It really was.
Would you just go back to your 90s childhood?
We also had this epic run of Disney movies that were just
The most
truly
epic.
special. When did Oliver and Company come out? Was that
Oliver?
90s?
I don't think that is that Disney.
Is it not?
I don't know.
Oh, I loved Oliver and Company.
Seems a little All Dogs Go to Heaven-ish to me.
No.
That was a good 90s flick.
Okay, never mind. I take it back.
Did you know that in All Dogs Go to Heaven, in the re-renders of that movie, they take out his nightmare, where he goes to
Yeah.
the double hockey sticks place,
Yes.
which is insane to put into a children's movie.
That was terrifying. And then not only did I watch that movie, my parents took me to those damnation houses or whatever they're called.
Now I do have to make it explicit.
What are they called? Hellfire. Judgment houses.
Judgment houses, Emily.
Damnation houses.
I mean, I guess technically we're talking about the same thing.
So I had that nightmare in my head, and then my parents took me to judgment houses. More than one. I was a terrified child.
Yeah, that is not your good old days.
That was not. That certainly was not. If you've wondered why I am anxiety prone,
Blame your parents.
judgment houses. Judgment houses.
You mean damnation houses?
That they will turn anyone anxious.
Okay. Yeah, I went to one. I thought the acting wasn't so great. I would go to 1847 because that's when they learned that washing your hands meant something.
Does it though, Jason?
And then in 1947, terrain theorists said, well, no, it doesn't. Germs aren't real. We got to do a conspiracy theory episode. I'm itching to do one just to
Yeah.
make people mad.
Eek.
Do we have any terrain theorists listening to us?
You know,
Can you explain to me the energy that's going on in the room when they start washing their hands in 1847 and then death rates plummet?
Here's the thing. I haven't studied terrain theory deeply. I have done a few readings, and the idea that your emotional state affects your ability to combat illness, or I'm not sure how they
Germs.
phrase it.
Infection,
The
disease.
your experiences and your personal well-being, I think, does influence whether you get sick sometimes. But like the other night
I
when
was
I
bottle
was,
propped, so I have polycystic kidney disease.
nobody said that. That's not what they mean.
There was negative energy going on.
I think, plus, that's not a pathogen or a germ.
They're okay with diseases, genetic diseases?
I think so.
Oh, genes are real?
I guess.
Got mine from Target. My genes. So genetic diseases are fine.
Jason, I've said I don't know. I'm not.
Can we do a whole episode on terrain theory?
If I can have some time to read more about it.
Oh.
There are lots of people who are all in. I think there's room for both theories. There's
No,
room
not for the
everyone.
terrain theorists.
No, well, I'm saying
They don't think there's room.
In some way.
They just straight up look at you and say, germs aren't real.
Well, I just have
I'm
a
going
hard
to
time
get comments
with
like,
that because
well, germs aren't real, Jason.
so many times, Jason,
Unfollow.
I've just watched the train of illness via exposure. I've watched it in stomach bugs, in children who aren't experiencing any added toxin load or poor diets, just living their regular life. And I've watched my son throw up into my hands a day after his friend did without him knowing it. And once you have a child throw up in your hands, it gets you questioning if germs are real.
Sounds to me like you weren't very in tune with his emotional state.
I mean, you think about like the very dawn of time, of early people.
I do that just about every day.
The first, would it have been an easier life? Harder?
To be what?
A first.
Like
Is
Adam
that
and
the good
Eve?
old
It'd be
days?
pretty hard to be Adam and Eve. They were in the...
I mean, they had it easy.
They had it easy. Then they had it hard.
Hard.
And then there was like giants in the land. And then comes Noah. It was a rough time.
But I think in my station, would it be so bad to make flatbread all day? Spend the day.
Guess it depends on what you want to do with your life.
It feels like there were, like, people could feel satisfied in their accomplishments more easily.
Before we end, I wanted...
We're bleeding followers here. They're like, who's this girl?
How do you think you would do making that journey on the Mayflower for how many days? 66 days.
66 days. Didn't we talk
Below
about this?
deck. No. Below deck. Are you making it?
Oh, I would have made it.
Hmm.
I would have made it. You know, there are people who can't just sit still. They have to be doing something. I'm not one of those people. I could
I
have
am.
sat on that deck.
I would have just volunteered to be a sailor.
You can't just volunteer like that.
There's this other idea that you and I have. You keep saying that it would have been so much easier to get rich back then.
Yes.
I disagree with you because
I'm
I think
not
it's
saying
like
it would have been so much easier. I'm saying it would have. There were more opportunities. It feels like if you just went to college. If you just went to college,
but I think
you were
getting there was a lot
guaranteed-
harder than it's all relative to the time you're in, right?
You were guaranteed a good job if you went to college, and then you could buy a home easily. And like it just wasn't the same process that it is now. And I think there was more inventiveness. You could invent things because there weren't all the things. Now there are just so many things. If you had an idea, you could make it happen. And now there are no ideas left, it feels. I know there are, but there's almost...
I think what we feel about ideas and what we could potentially come up with is exactly how people felt 100 years ago about ideas and what could be come up with. You couldn't just conceive of electricity when you had oil lamps if you weren't Edison or whoever else.
I get it, but a woman invented the windshield wiper.
Well, there had to be a windshield first.
I get that. I understand that, but there's just so much more to invent than there is now.
That we know of. I don't know. I think you're potentially wrong. I think a lot of what's invented is just digital, though.
I'm not interested in anything digital. You know this.
Well, looks like you're not going to be inventing anything then.
Probably not. I've thought of a few ideas.
Your mom thought of the squeezed ketchup bottle.
My mom stands by that. She thought of the squeezable ketchup bottle and was a kid and didn't know how to pursue that. We could have been rich. Could have
had it all. You would have been Emily Hines.
My name changes when my
You
mom
would have
invents.
married into the Hines family.
Your mother invented the squeezable ketchup bottle, so we will introduce your daughter to...
She saved our estate.
Yes.
Emily, come meet my son, Jeremy Hines.
I don't know. There might not be a Jeremy Hines.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
I'm just
I'm
saying.
sure Heinz was doing just fine with their glass bottles.
We're just driving by all these old farms and old houses, and it's like, how long has that been in the family? Because their ancestors had the wherewithal to walk
Oh, yeah.
out.
You
and be
ain't
like,
buying that now.
Yeah.
Nobody's buying that now.
No,
It's like,
you
you see a
can't.
nice property up in New Hampshire or wherever, or, you know.
You've been grandfathered in.
Oh, yeah. Or you've been great-great-grandfathered in. Nobody's buying that unless you're from California who got grandfathered in somewhere else. It's like 0.00001% of the population are self-made people. I get the feeling this isn't your era.
Where I am now?
You're not choosing this one.
I know. I get mad that I have to charge things, charge them, plug it in. I don't like that.
I hate lithium-ion batteries. What a horrible product.
I don't want to.
I'd rather use alkaline.
What are this?
I never had to plug anything in. I just changed it out.
Fake buttons on a screen. It's not a real button, and then it doesn't work.
I only like analog things.
Yeah.
Why is a clock digital?
Really?
I want to hear the tick-tock, 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 and I don't want to see tick-tock.
Right.
Right.
Same.
Hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm holding a microphone. Ugh, at least it has a cord. Why do I have to speak into this thing anyway? Why can't my voice just carry?
See what I have to deal with?
I'd rather have beeswax candles than this light glaring in my eyes.
Well, we didn't bring a stack of candles with us for this trip. Sorry, dear. Let us know what era you would live in.
I say as I complain about living in a pop-up that
I broke.
so much nicer than what people had to pioneer.
Yeah.
So much nicer.
This is basically a covered
I
wagon.
don't remember what hot water feels like, but I have running water.
Yeah.
Clean.
My running water is cold.
Thank you.
Hand me my Berkey. We need to filter the filtered potable water.
Well, I would say there were a lot more options for clean drinking water before our era.
It's fine now. Once it kind of goes through the rocks, the runoff from the gaseous diffusion plants and stuff won't really harm what you're drinking. It's fine. It's fine. Seriously, it's okay.
We say from living in Western
My
Kentucky.
brain is perfectly great. Yeah, we have a gaseous. Well, I guess it's not really there anymore. They just buried it all, right? Is it running now?
I thought they revived it.
I don't know anything about our town. I just live there. I don't participate in anything.
Thank you for listening to the Really Very Crunchy podcast. If you enjoyed this episode somehow, be sure you leave a review and send
We're trying to get it 1,000 reviews. Next week we'll have Drew Carey on.
Send Jason a message of encouragement.
It was Bob Barker last. That was Drew. I'm really with The Price is right now. That's nostalgia.
I did love The Price is Right.
Do-do-do-do.
You met the winningest most player on The Price is Right at one point.
I am connected to two of the winningest players on The Price is Right. One was a guy's brother, I think, who won a lot. And then one, I actually knew him, Mark Weaver.
You learned a trick on how to get on The Price is Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think just what I've heard is that you just have to be a character. They want a good screen presence. If they don't pick contestants until they actually pick people out of the crowd. They kind of do it ahead of time. You get a pre-interview for The Price is Right.
Sure.
Why are we talking about this? But everybody in the
would
crowd.
love to go on The Price is Right. Is Drew Carey still doing it? Drew, if you're watching this.
First of all, you're
me
scheduled for next week, so we can reach 1,000 views or 1,000 reviews. And second of all, can we get on your show?
Yes, but anyway, they do a pre-interview for everybody in the crowd, and then they try to just pick the the most camera, whatever,
I see.
bright people, you know.
Yes.
So you just kind of you have to be a character when you go. Probably not too much.
Yeah.
You got to find the right
steal the
balance.
show.
I don't know what that balance is. I've never been.
Yeah.
It's in California, I think. But
Well, if you're going on, now you know the trick.
I'd love to see the crunchy mom on The Price is Right. And you're like, oh my
You
gosh.
want a new car.
What's the price of Clorox bleach? I'm like, I don't know.
$12?
Well, I make my own cleaner, you know.
I thought you were going to say bleach.
Bleach.
I was
I
like,
make my
that's
own
scary.
It's been a really, really hard process. I can't breathe anymore.
Goodbye.
Review now.